Hello everyone and welcome to today's video, and we're going to be talking about something that everyone eventually talks about when it comes to fermenting, and that is kombucha and making kombucha at home. As you can see, this is my go-to jar. It is 3.8 liters or about a gallon. So I make a gallon of kombucha roughly every 4 or so days. And this is just one jar. I actually have another 3 liter jar which I'm busy making a rooibos kombucha in, but we'll go into that in a moment. So what is kombucha? Well, I like to say it's a fancy iced tea. It's really a fermented iced tea, but it's not just fermented. It's fermented using this thing called a scoby. So this is a scoby pellicle, and scoby stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeasts, and it's pretty much a type of fungus that you then put in your tea. And as my wonderful friends like to call it, they call it fungus wee. So you ferment your tea with your scoby, and that's how you get kombucha. And you usually ferment it for around 4 to 5 days in its initial ferment before putting it in a secondary ferment in a jar. So just quickly, my recipe for standard kombucha is 4 tea bags of black tea in about 3 liters of warm water, and I leave it to really soak until the tea is nice and strong. Then I put it in here with my scoby and 1.5 cups of sugar. I then leave that for 4 days. After the 4th day, so on the 5th day, I then decant it. I leave some of the tea in the jar itself with the scoby, and then I just refill from there. And then I decant the rest into bottles like this. So this is 750 ml bottle. I either add a 1/4 cup of fruit juice or some chopped fruit pieces. So this week I've done pineapple kombucha is absolutely delicious. So this week I've done pineapple chunks that I've chopped up in there with a teaspoon of sugar. I seal it and I leave this to carbonate for 3 days. So after 3 days, it's eaten up, the bacteria and the yeast have eaten up the sugar, and it's a perfect carbonation for a sparkling kombucha tea. So all in all, it takes 7 days. The rooibos tea I do in the exact same way, in the exact same measurements, except the rooibos takes a little bit longer to reach the best fermentation. That's what I've discovered. So I leave my black tea for 4 days. I would leave my rooibos for a full week for 7 days before I decant it and bottle it, just because it does seem to take a little bit longer. And I think it's maybe because I'm to do with the fact that it's got no caffeine. It is also a completely different plant. Rooibos and normal tea are completely different plants, so they do ferment differently. Okay, so let's talk about scobies. You have to have a scoby. Look, you can ferment black tea without the scoby, but then it's literally just fermented tea. It's only kombucha when you've used the scoby, which is this wonderful collection of bacteria and yeasts. If you leave it for too long, your kombucha will become vinegar, and then you got kombucha vinegar, which will be high in acetic acid, which isn't bad. I mean, I use my scobies to make normal fruit vinegars as well. I do have fruit vinegar scobies I use specifically for that, and kombucha scobies just as good for you for as many of the same reasons. Why do we ferment the tea? We do it mostly for probiotics and prebiotics. So I have these really wonderful friends of mine, and I love them to bits, and they are scientists. And once many moon ago, I was having a discussion with them about probiotics and having probiotics and taking them for your good gut health. You know, you buy the tablets over the counter, and they pretty much told me, well, the probiotics that you buy over the counter are very unlikely to even make it into your body. They'll get completely destroyed by your stomach acids. So what you're buying over the counter doesn't really work, because it literally just gets destroyed before it can enter your gut, where it does the most help. When you ferment your food at home, again, your stomach acids do destroy most of the probiotics that are fermented in the food. but some of it does get through. So you are more likely to actually get good probiotic health through home fermented foods than you are by buying over-the-counter probiotic capsules. Even though a large amount of probiotics are destroyed, then you may be finding yourself asking two questions like, why should you? Well, the main question of why should you still ferment? So our ancestors didn't ferment for probiotics and good gut health. They were fermenting to make sure that they had food that was preserved to last them through the winter. And that's the main reason why us as a human species started fermenting foods, was quite simply just to preserve your food. And fermenting to this day is still a really good, healthy way of preserving your food and not destroying all the nutrients in your food, rather just letting it ferment and last longer. And that's should be your primary reason for most fermenting of foods. And then some of those probiotics from home fermented foods do get into your gut, but an interesting research has recently been done that says that if something can be fermented with the use of a scoby, so if your probiotics survive the fermentation process and all those good bacteria survive the fermentation process with a scoby involved, then those good bacteria and those probiotics are even more likely to make it into your gut and to be able to survive your stomach acid. So that's quite an interesting thing and quite a bit of an interesting research to look at, and I'll leave the link to that research in the video description. So that is one good reason why you should be fermenting kombucha with the scoby, because you're most likely to get those really good probiotics, prebiotics, which obviously increase your serotonin as well and increase your gut health, your happiness levels, and literally make your life much better. So that's it. That's on fermenting kombucha. Why else would you want to grow scoby? So I don't know how, but the other night I couldn't sleep and I went on this random Google session of scobies and what you can do with scobies besides fermenting. And did you know that you can eat them? Scobies are edible. These gross little slimy looking discs are quite edible. So I watched a few recipes, and a lot of the recipes that the scobies are best suited to are actually Asian inspired cuisine. So I decided to try my very own hand at it, and it's going to be my follow-up video, and I'm going to tell you to go and watch it and give it a try, because you should experiment with everything at least once. My wife is amazing and she lets me experiment with these things on her and she's a really good sport and I love her so much for it. But the other night, I was inspired, it bugged me for a few days, so I made the other night and it is actually really, really good. I made scoby tempura. So watch out for my next post, because I'm going to be sharing with you my scoby tempura recipe and you're going to want to try it out. It's got very much the same texture of if you were eating something like squid or octopus. So it's got that little squishy texture, but as a tempura, it's actually really good because it has a sour vinegar flavor. It goes really well with like a sweet chili or a sweet and sour sauce. But I'll also be sharing my sweet chili sauce recipe with you coming up. So watch the next video on how I do the tempura and give it a try. And if you don't grow scobies for kombucha, you might want to get a scoby and start growing a whole lot of your own, just so that you can start making some amazing Asian inspired cuisine. And one last thing before I go. So guys, I have been growing some really amazing and healthy scobies. This is black tea. I've got black tea and vinegar scobies, and I've been farming and growing these because I'm launching my own scoby farm. So I have my own shop on Jaeger. Here's the link. Check out the link. Go and check out my Jaeger store, because that's where I'm selling my scoby. So if you want to buy a scoby, whether it's to try a recipe or to do your own kombucha or to start growing even more scobies from that, which I'll give you the instructions with on sale, then you will be able to pick it up all in my store. And these are really top quality, amazing, strong scobies. So you'd want to get yourself, and they're really affordable. So check it out and start growing. growing your own scobies and making your own kombucha at home.